think by now we've made it a tradition to do one of these kind of ranking videos every month. We've done birds, cats, reptiles, and now we're on to probably the cutest group yet, the bears. This group specifically is pretty special to me because some of you may know that I went on a trip in July, and there I saw bears in the wild. Granted, those were black bears and coastal brown bears, two species that we do not have in the game, but regardless, let's have some fun and let's rank all the bears. Now, before we get started, of course, there are a couple of ground rules and a couple things I want to bring up we always go over. Number one, this is my list. If you don't agree with it, totally fine. Comment down below your own list of the bear rankings and how you would rank them, and I would love to compare them. I always love reading the comments on these videos. Alongside that, again, another thing to bring up with these rankings, my criteria. I try to judge on design, like how good the animal looks, usability, how useful it is, and its worth. For example, if it's in a DLC, is the rest of the DLC good or is it worth your money? Now, to put myself clear, I very rarely build for bears. This is not like the cats or the birds where I build for those a lot, but I rarely have any experience with bears. That will be more, that might influence my bias a little bit with this ranking. Also, this ranking will be a bit different than the other three. Instead of going one by one from worst to best like the other three ranking videos, we instead will be using the actual tier list template on Tier Maker. We have three categories just like how they're given in the thumbnail: best, mid, and trash. We'll be going through each bear in the order that they were introduced in the game and ranking them in one of the three categories. At the end, we'll look at the overall ranking at the tier list and we'll see like which, and we'll still have that worst to best ranking. So with that, let's get on to the ranking. Here we go. Alright, starting off, we have the grizzly bear, one of the most iconic animals in North America and is a pretty popular one in zoos, especially North America sections. So let's look at worth. The grizzly bear is from the base game, so you don't have to pay extra for it, so that's a plus. However, because it's from the base game, this means that the model of the grizzly has a bit to be desired. And now we're transitioning into the design aspect of the grizzly. I would unfortunately say that the grizzly model, as well as the other base game bear models for the most part, don't look the best and are pretty lacking and disappointing, honestly, with like the detail. I think bears in this game are really animals that need those high quality fur textures that we got later on with things like the sloth and spectacled bears. But with these earlier species, they're missing these textures, and because of this, to me, the fur looks really blocky and just kind of weird. Some other things wrong with the grizzly bear specifically are its chunkiness. The grizzly in-game is very obese with a shorter body, yet very fat, making it look really off. An actual grizzly is a lot less beefy and has a smaller back hump also. You'll notice where that front set of like legs are for the grizzly, that very hump at the beginning where like its joint meat matches its body, you'll notice that there's a very large hump there in the actual game model, and in real life these humps are varying, but they're usually not that big like ever. I think it would be better realism wise if it was a bit like more smoothed out, and then this would also give it a resulting body that is looking more longer and less kind of stubbier and chunky. There are also some other small fixes to be made with like the colors of the bear and the look at the face. However, all this to say that the grizzly bear still isn't that bad of a model. It's not at the level of like the lion, but it's still not that good, which makes me want to put it in the trash category. But the saving grace for the grizzly is how useful it is as an animal. Like I said earlier, grizzly bears are staples in a lot of zoos, especially North American zoos. And even though the model might not be good visually, I still have seen and heard lots of people using them still in their zoos. I think weighing these factors, I'll put it in the mid category, but the more bears we add, it will probably drop further down that same category. Okay, we have the Himalayan brown bear from the base game. I have seen a lot of complaints about this bear over the years, and honestly I have to agree with most of them because the species inclusion in the game is just so bizarre. This is a species that is not common in captivity, it's in the base game so it's not the best looking, and this specific subspecies, at least to me, doesn't really make a lot of sense for why it was put in here in the first place. This could have easily been relabeled as or edited to the Eurasian brown bear, which would actually mean something to European players because the Eurasian brown bear is a species that I have seen requested by some of the community, but a large part of the community also doesn't want it to take up a spot in a DLC. So to me, the perfect solution to this would be to put it in the base game of Planet Zoo instead of the Himalayan brown bear, or better yet, in the future, replace the Himalayan for the Eurasian in Planet Zoo 2 base game. Now, with the Himalayan brown bear, again, the model of the brown bear is... It needs some work. I mean, it still resembles the bear, but there are some heavy critiques with it. The main thing is the textures and the face. The textures I can kind of forgive because it is a base game model, so similar to problems with the lion or tiger, those textures aren't nearly as good as the animals we have gotten more recently. With the head and face, a lot of it looks blocky to me, and the colors are a bit off. It just doesn't look very close to its in real life counterpart. As far as usability, I simply just don't use it, and I never see people build for it anymore. And seeing how we have 4 other bear species for Asia, which some of those 4 look a lot better than the Himalayan, I just don't see the need to build for this one anymore when it looks a lot worse than others that we already have. There's no saving grace for the Himalayan Himalayan brown bear, it doesn't have a good model, it's barely used, and it's simply a weird choice. Straight into the trash category. Giant panda. This one's a bit tricky because it's a panda, another very iconic animal in zoos across the world. But keep in mind, only a handful of zoos outside of China actually have pandas because of their needs and their values to have in general. I think pandas get their status of an icon more because of what they look like in general, not because they're in zoos. Which makes sense because no other animal looks like this. I mean, come on, look at it. They're just adorable. However, because they are not super common in zoos, this could influence the players in Planet Zoo that want to build more modern zoos, as modern realistic zoos don't usually have pandas unless you're building a really high profile zoo, like high expense zoo, like the San Diego Zoo. Now obviously this is just a game. If you want to build for pandas, but I'm just trying to think of what this animal means to different types of builders. So going off of usability alone, I would put it at mid. But we have another category to judge by: design. The panda's design is honestly just fine. There are a lot of fixes and changes that I would make other than just the textures could be enhanced. For example, the model in the game is colored almost completely either black and white. There's no in between. From my experience, you rarely see pandas that are this clean and this bright. I think it would have been more realistic and nice to see some more browns and grays in the panda's body coat to make it look more natural and realistic. It's not something that diminishes the model completely, but it's just a small touch that would go a long way in my opinion. A couple other fixes they could do to make it look a bit better are blending the eyes into like the black spots so they're not so cartoony looking, or again, maybe just give it like a yellowish like tint or a brownish tint to the body overall, just to give it a more realistic feeling. Overall, it has mid usability and mid design, so guess what it ends up in? The mid category. Above the grizzly though, because it has a better model. Alright, the last base game bear to rank, the Formosan black bear. Honestly, this one to me right off the bat is just really forgettable that we even have it. In fact, when I was writing the script for this video, I originally forgot it in the list of bears to rank because I never use it, and it's been forever since I've seen a video on it or anyone talk about it. It's not an animal that really gets a bad reputation. Like I remembered the Himalayan brown bear because that one is so complained about. With this one, nobody doesn't appreciate it, but also no one does. So it's just kind of in that middle spot where it's just like, I've never used this, I don't remember it at all. But again, this obviously affects its usability. I think another main reason it's been forget about is because with later packs we now have the Sun Bear and the Sloth Bear, two bears also from Asia that are a lot more impressive in terms of design and being more common icon wise. If I decide that I want to do a habitat for an Asian bear, why would I choose the Formosan black bear that has a below average model as opposed to the Sun or Sloth bears that look a lot better with their design quality? Speaking of the design of the Formosan black bear, let's switch to that. It's not a terrible design, it is probably slightly better than the Himalayan and Grizzly Bears, but there are still a lot of fixes that can be made to it. For example, updating the textures to give it more poofiness and fluff, especially around its neck, make it look a bit more happy and not depressed all the time with its little face, and round out the ears with more tuff or fluff to make it more realistic. Again, little things, but ultimately would help the model of the black bear a lot and make it look a lot better. So in the end, the Formosan black bear has a poor model and is barely thought of anymore just because of how many Asian bear alternatives we have instead of it. I'm putting it in the trash tier above the Himalayan. There's still a big gap between this guy and the Himalayan brown bear. Alright, polar bear. This should be a fun one. We are now moving away from the bears from the base game and now getting onto the DLC bears, which as a whole do perform a lot better than the base game bears. First up, we have the iconic polar bear from the Arctic pack. Starting with worth again, the polar bear comes from the Arctic pack like we just said, which the pack as a whole is not that good in my opinion. It comes with the bear, the reindeer, the Dall sheep, and the Arctic wolf, and a bunch of kind of medieval village plus Christmas scenery or Nordic village kind of materials. I barely use the Arctic wolf, Dall sheep, and the scenery. The only one I could see myself using regularly is the reindeer, which for $10 is not that good of a trade. So in terms of worth, I wouldn't say the polar bear does too well. Now with design, it does earn some points as the model for the polar bear actually isn't that bad. It's not nearly at the level of something like the Sloth Bear, which looks amazing, but other than just improving the textures and maybe adding a bit more variety in the colors, I think the polar bear is a perfectly fine to good model that definitely is a step up or a step in the right direction from the base game bears. Finally, with usability, I think this is where it struggles the most. This may be a blanket statement, but I don't think anybody really likes making huge enclosures that take a really long time to finish. And with the polar bear, if you're going by the game's requirements, yeah, you're gonna be building for a while. I know polar bears of course need a lot of room in real zoos, but the space requirements for the polar bears in the game are just absolutely ridiculous. It is such a struggle to build for the polar bears because of their habitat size requirements, especially if you like building detailed enclosures. Building something this big will definitely take you a while to finish. So overall, not great value with a $10 price tag, decently good model, and habitat requirements that make you struggle a lot to build for it. Balancing everything out, I would put it in the mid tier between the Grizzly and the Panda. Okay, fast tracking up to spring of 2021 with the Sun Bear from the Southeast Asia Animal Pack. Now this one is a little more interesting to rank, because just starting with the Southeast Asia pack, it is a pretty decent pack. Other than the Sun Bear, you get a few other heavy hitters like the Binturong, Clouded Leopard, Himalayan Tapir, and the Babirusa. They aren't species that you need for an Asia section, but they are very nice to have to expand those Asia sections in your zoos. I'd say, at least from my perspective, that the pack as a whole with everything you get is worth it. Okay, now looking at the Sun Bear specifically with design and usability, starting with design. The Sun Bear's model is actually pretty solid. It's from a more recent pack than the other bears so far, so it makes sense that it looks significantly better. The Sun Bear even got its own animations when it joined the roster, for example like it bouncing back and relaxing in the hammock, or leaning on its hind legs sticking its tongue out. These animations for me set the Sun Bear apart from the other bear species, but moving on to usability, I'd say the Sun Bear is decent in terms of how often it's used in the community, and also by myself personally. While there are a couple of other options for Asian bears like giant pandas or sloth bears, I can see a lot of players building for the Sun Bear as a choice itself. It's a unique species, especially for Asia sections, that I think has a fairly regular and decent reputation in the game's roster, and in real life for that matter. Overall, the Sun Bear is from a good pack, it has decent usability, and it's a pretty good looking model. I'm going to put it in the best category because it does pretty well in all three categories, but I think our next two upcomers will probably beat it in the best category, in that category. Now moving on to the Sloth Bear from the Eurasia Animal Pack released in winter of 2023, and this one definitely is a contender to be the best. First off, as far as its value goes and worth, the Sloth Bear is from a DLC, so you have to pay extra for it, but the pack that it comes from, the Eurasia pack, is a very good pack in my opinion. You get several other iconic animals from Europe and Asia, like the Wisent, Wolverine, Wild Boar, Mute Swan, Takin, etc. I will say that this pack is more focused towards Europe, so if you want the bear and also are lacking some European animals, then definitely get this pack. But if you're maybe only going for Asian animals, then go for the Asia or Southeast Asia packs if you're not so attached to this specific species. Anyway, I would say that the Sloth Bear is worth it 100% as far as if it's worth paying for in like this pack. Now, another strength it has is its model, and wow, this thing is absolutely beautiful. The Sloth Bear model is definitely one of the best looking models of the entire game, and I feel like there's always one animal in these rankings that trump the others in design. With the birds, it was the swan, in the reptiles, it was the tortoise, and in this video, it is by far the Sloth Bear. Everything about this bear is perfect. The fur textures, the ears, the shagginess, the claws, the face, it's amazing. It's fantastic. The only thing I can fault it for is not having the piggyback animation when the baby will cling on to the adult, but I can forgive that because it was probably a tricky animation to do. This is such a difficult animal to do in general because of how the fur for this animal looks. I was surprised that they made it this well and good looking. Now onto usability, which is where I think it is lacking just a bit, and I think it keeps it maybe from that top spot. Now on the positive side, I do think that more people are likely to use a Sloth Bear because we now have so many Asia species that you can make a proper good looking Asia section or Asian zoo, but there are still bears like mainly the giant panda, which are more iconic, so it always gives that kind of like other option to use instead of it. I really don't know how to rank this one with usability because it's not a super well known or iconic animal, but it's still one that looks really good, which would both influence how useful it is. I do think that it is one that I could see several players using multiple times. Overall, the Sloth Bear excels in all three categories, so it is definitely the front runner currently, so it is going in the best category. And now we are on to the final bear of our ranking, the Spectacled Bear, from the Zookeeper's Animal Pack released in the fall of 2024. This is really tough if this one is better than the Sloth Bear because while I think the Sloth Bear is more impressive visually, the Spectacled Bear plays a bigger role in the game's roster because of the lack of South America representation, so this one really was kind of like a breath of fresh air when we got it in the game. So let's start with worth. The Spectacled Bear comes from the Zookeeper's Animal Pack, which in my opinion is also a very good pack. The difference with this one and Eurasia is that Eurasia expands greatly on 2 continents specifically, with 5 animals from Europe and 3 animals from Asia I believe, while Zookeeper's expands on 3 continents with more of a global focus. For Africa you get 4 species, Asia you get 2, and South America 1. Each pack is excellent with animal quality and choices. There is no better pack to get in my opinion. I would say the Zookeeper pack is definitely worth it for what it is. Now for design, the Spectacled Bear model is also really good. I would say that the Sloth Bear model is more impressive, but I think that's just because of the fluffiness of the Sloth Bear, and that's not really the animal's fault, it's just that I'm impressed more that Frontier perfected the Sloth Bear more than I am that they did with the spectacled bear, because I figured that would be a bit more of an easier one to do. Overall, a solid model that does its IRL counterpart justice. Finally, usability. As many of you know, South America is very lacking with representation, even after the Americas pack that was supposed to help it, which it did for a bit, but it didn't boost it maybe up enough that where it should be, and the Spectacled Bear was one of the most requested South American editions specifically to help this. So the Spectacled Bear is probably more useful and is used more often across the community compared to a lot of the other bears. Let alone it's also the most recent, which also influences people's interest in building for it. Overall, the Spectacled Bear is from a pretty good pack, it has an excellent model, and is pretty useful. I think personally, for me speaking, I would choose the Sloth Bear to be the winner, but weighing, like, personal bias aside and weighing out the negatives and the positives of each, I do think that the Spectacled Bear is deserving of the #1 spot, so that is where I will put it in this. So there you go. That would mean our final ranking is in number 8 from number 1. We have the Himalayan Brown Bear, the Formosan Black Bear. In the mid category, we have the Grizzly Bear, then to the Polar Bear, and then the Giant Panda. And then in the best category, our top 3, number 3, the Sun Bear, our runner-up, the Sloth Bear, and our winner is the Spectacled Bear. I really hope you guys enjoyed this ranking. It was pretty fun for me. I always like the bears. Again, it's a bit of a shorter one because there's only 8 of them, but I tried to flesh it out and give more explanations and stuff to kind of justify my rankings for each of them. If you did enjoy this video, please hit the subscribe button. There's a lot of editing that goes into each of these ranking videos, which is why I can only do one a month, and also in upcoming months I will be even busier, so I will try my best to get more ranking videos out, but we shall see where that leads to us. But if you did appreciate this video and you want to see more, please hit the subscribe button because it means a lot to me, it means a lot to the channel. Comment down below what your ranking of the bears would be, because I would love to know that, and I would see like how it's different from mine. I always love comparing those. I'll look everyone's ranking and like the list and stuff to mine, so that's always pretty fun. I hope you all have enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Bye guys, have a great rest of your day, have a great rest of your night, whatever time it may be, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.